Hi everyone, my name is Leanne Hughes, and in this presentation, I will be discussing the topic of inclusion. Within this, I will explore the relation of inclusion to the encounter conception of restorative justice, in addition to offering my opinions on inclusion. Van Ness and Strong 2015 mention when we speak of inclusion, we mean the opportunity for direct and an active involvement of each party in the procedures that follow a crime. The textbook uses the story of David and Goliath to represent the elements of inclusion. This, I think, was a good way to portray inclusion. It emphasized that in order to make progress, we need to invite others in and be willing to change our thinking. The elements of inclusion, as described by Van Ness and Strong 2015, are invitation, recognition, and acceptance of the interests of the person invited, and the willingness to adopt alternative approaches that better fit that individual. So, why inclusion? I think that the use of inclusion could be very beneficial in a lot of criminal cases. Given that communities do not typically have a lot of say in criminal cases, inclusion aims to involve all parties as to benefit the most amount of people. Also, implementing inclusion could eliminate a lot of the why questions in a criminal case. In addition, as society changes, it's important to keep an open mind and accept alternative approaches, as for what works for one person might not work for the next. Inclusion can be related to the encounter conception of restorative justice. As Van Ness and Strong 2015 mentioned, restorative encounter programs invite all interested parties to participate, empowering them through opportunities to pursue their diverse interests. To get more into detail, I wanted to talk about the encounter conception further. Van Ness, 1997, mentioned that unlike joint presence in court, in which parties may be aware that the other is there but not given a chance to interact, restorative encounters are usually face to face. This makes the situation more intimate and emotional. Speaking of emotion, some might argue that when a victim presents their emotions to a courtroom, it creates a bias. However, restorative encounters value this and accept the emotion as an appropriate response to crimes. These situations are meant to develop understanding of the crime between the parties. Normally, in criminal cases, the victim's only role is to be a witness. Van Ness and Strong 2015 mentioned that the criminal proceeding is designed to serve public goals of incapacitation, rehabilitation, deterrence, and retribution. Because of this, the victim's interest is typically ignored. There are three ways that victims are typically included in the criminal justice system. One, through information, two, through presence in court, and three, through victim impact statements. While it's not very inclusive, victims can be given information relating to the trial and proceedings. As per Van Ness and Strong 2015, some of the information given includes information on hearings, bail release, trial dates, parole, escapes, and other points regarding the offender. Typically, those who are testifying in a criminal trial cannot attend the trial in order to avoid witnesses changing their testimony based on what other witnesses' answers are. However, most states are now allowing victims to attend the trial after they've already testified. So now victims are able to observe the proceedings as a spectator. Victims are allowed to make a formal presentation at sentencing. They can give a victim's impact statement during certain parts of the trial to tell their story to decision makers that talks about things such as the harm they've experienced and what they think the punishment should be. So, are these efforts helping? In my opinion, I think that these efforts can be both helpful and harmful to victims in certain cases. They are helpful because victims, offenders, and the community can gain a better understanding on crime, which might help answer some of the why questions in cases. However, victims are in a vulnerable state, and revealing their stories might be a traumatic experience. One other concern with inclusion is the question of whether it is universal, meaning, could it be effective in all cases, or would it be better in some than others? After completing this research, I believe there should be some sort of justice reform, and inclusion in restorative justice could be the answer. Having a better functioning justice system can build the community's trust in the system, which would be a good thing. The purpose of trials is to determine if what a person did was right or wrong. But if the system was to be reformed to be restorative in nature, then the victim should be involved in all parts. Thanks everyone for listening. I hope you enjoyed my presentation on inclusion, and I look forward to watching everybody else's presentations.